The information provided in this podcast episode is for entertainment purposes and is not medical advice. If you have any questions about your health, contact a medical professional. This content is strictly the opinions of Lucas Aoun and is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The references, claims, and scientific information linked to any products are only applicable to those listeners who are based in the US. If you are outside the US, this information does not apply to you. It is not intended to provide medical advice or to take the place of medical advice or treatment from a personal physician. All viewers of this content are advised to consult with their doctors or qualified health professionals regarding specific health questions. Thank you for listening to the Boost Your Biology podcast. My name is Lucas Aoun. I uncover the most cutting-edge health information on the planet, ranging from hormones, nutrition, supplementation, fat loss, biohacking, longevity, wellness, and a whole lot more. Welcome to the Boost Your Biology podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Boost Your Biology podcast. Today, I have a very special guest joining me in the studio who is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to optimizing human health and specifically all around functional testing. Today, we have Tanya from optimumtesting.com.au. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So Tanya, maybe do you want to let my listeners know a little bit about yourself and how did you get so interested in health optimization?
Yeah, so I am a clinical nutritionist. I studied nutritional medicine and basically this whole journey started because when I was younger, growing up in high school and, my early 20s, the information on health was just not making any sense. So I grew up in a phase where eggs were bad for you if it fit into your macros. If you wanted to lose weight, you better get running. So it was just all these things that would make you sick eventually. Nothing was good for your health or your skin or your thyroid or your menstrual cycle. So I kind of got over that and I started doing my own research, and that's how the journey began.
Yeah, awesome. And it's funny you mentioned that discussion around egg intake and whether or not eggs are actually healthy. I mean, how many times you get asked that in clinic? Like when clients come in, you still get asked that, right?
Still, yeah, it doesn't have cholesterol, or I don't want to eat the yolk. There's too much fat in that. And you're like, please eat it. Please eat the yolk. It's just so important. It contains so many nutrients in there. And, the quality of the egg is obviously very important as well. But even, when I was younger, I had a trainer and she was like, you need to only have half a banana with your oats, or, no avocado, or forget olives. And me being from like a Mediterranean background, my mum would cook these beautiful foods and we had olive oil and avocado and olives and fatty fish. And that was just shunned when I was younger, and it just didn't make any sense. And I actually got really sick. So I was really over the information that was out there.
Yeah, it's definitely outdated. And I think, well, where would you say most of the confusion lies for consumers or people these days? You feel like it's like social media or where's that stemming from?
I like the fact of social media. I like that there's a wide array of information. But I think there is still this ignorance for food is fuel and the micro minerals that we need in order for these biochemical pathways to work. So that is still not step one. I don't even think some people are talking about it at all. It's just, I don't like the demonization of food and the demonization of exercise. That should be at the bottom of your list. You should be making sure that you're having, your B vitamins, your vitamin D, iodine, selenium, things like that as the proper building blocks for health as your first protocol.
What do you think, if we looked at some of the typical issues that people are facing now when it comes to nutrition, what do you feel like are the core, areas of confusion are around nutrition?
I don't know where to start. I think eating is still a really confusing part for people. What should I eat? And I don't blame people for thinking that, because although I really like social media and the idea of social media, it's still very aesthetic. So people will tend to put their focus on, a set of abs or some biceps or something like that, and then copy that, and then be like, well, this isn't working for me. I don't know why. And now I'm really sick. So eating the right foods, I think, is still the core issue. And again, that goes back to ignoring microminerals and micronutrients that we need as a step one.
Absolutely. Now, Tanya, in terms of your own health journey, I mean, you mentioned that you actually you experienced a significant amount of sickness yourself, or you had some issues with your health. Do you want to sort of share that with my listeners so they know how you got into all this?
Yeah. So when I was younger, like I said, if you wanted to drop weight, you better get used to cardio, because that would be the only way you could drop weight. You better be used to eating 1 meal a day. And that was kind of hammered into us females from a younger age. No regard for our thyroid or reproductive health or our skin, our hair even. So when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I developed hypothyroidism. I had, low mood. My menstrual cycle was all over the place. And then I was misdiagnosed with PCOS. So I was diagnosed with PCOS. And then as I came to my mid-20s, they were like, oh, you don't actually have that. So it was, put that all together, as a female growing up, you really become lost and you don't know where to go at all. So that was me. Yeah.
Wow. So then did you then discover the power of nutrition and how much of an impact that was going to have on your overall health after that?
Yeah. So I just started reading. I started reading books, food science, biotechnology, vitamins. And when I was reading what vitamins do to the body, I was thinking to myself, well, I don't eat that. I don't do that. Maybe I don't have that. Maybe that's the reason why. Like I said, iodine and selenium, I never had anyone talk to me about iodine and selenium and the importance of that to your thyroid. Also, when I was younger, there was a huge push on jumping on the pill. So if you had any issues with your menstrual cycle, the doctor's first protocol was like, well, why don't you go on the pill? You won't get any of this pain anymore. Your bleeding will stop, your acne will stop. And I'm so thankful I didn't join that, because we're seeing now, late 20s, 30s, late 30s, the high rise of infertility. And if we go back 10, 15 years, being on the pill and silencing those really important hormones, it's going to do something to your overall health.
Yeah, I think I've also seen it quite a lot, particularly in women's health and the goal to drop weight, which is extreme caloric deprivation or caloric restriction, which is both you and I know the consequences that can have on your overall health. And so talk to us about what sort of impact can being in a caloric deficit have?
Well, no energy for one. So no energy, but then you're going to still exercise and you end up what they call over exercising, which is going to put too much stress on the body. Your menstrual cycle is going to suffer. We need huge amounts of zinc, B vitamins, magnesium for that whole thing to work. Plus you need your thyroid to work. So, your iodine and selenium, if you're not eating, that's already hard enough to get in your diet. So if you're not eating, where is that coming from? You're going to develop things like depression, anxiety, poor microbiome. It all interconnects, and you end up feeling like you don't even have the mental strength to continue on whatever program someone's put you on. It's just, there are so many easier ways to lose weight and stay healthy than dropping your calories so low.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And also when it comes to thyroid health, I feel like a lot of people are really confused with what the functions of the thyroid hormones are. So maybe do you want to speak upon, why they're so crucial for overall health?
Yes. So what Optimum Testing do, we actually provide a comprehensive thyroid panel, and this includes your thyroid hormones and your thyroid antibodies. So This is different from a test that you'd get at the GP. They usually just test something called TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. Now, that doesn't give us an accurate interpretation of your thyroid health. That is just the pathway from your brain to your thyroid. So this section here, and we kind of need to know what's happening in the actual thyroid and then the whole cycle down and then the feedback loop. So we look at the big picture of the thyroid. Your thyroid hormones are responsible for your overall metabolism, and they have a huge link to your reproductive system. So your sex hormones. So that if that's not working properly, that's going to trickle down as well.
Yeah, I think a number of people aren't aware that thyroid hormones are actually really crucial for metabolizing estrogen and also modulating other hormones. And for example, I know that you care about, where a patient's cortisol levels are at, but did you want to sort of speak upon how cortisol blood testing through just through a regular doctor just isn't enough?
Yeah, so I might touch on another test that we offer. It's the Dutch test, and that incorporates your cortisol levels throughout the day. So this is a test that it's almost like a 24-hour mapping test, and we get your cortisol when it rises and when it drops throughout the day. This would be different from a serum test because that's one point in time. And there are a few things that can impact your cortisol, say like the time they got it done or if they've eaten and things like that. So it's not the most accurate form of cortisol testing.
Yeah, that's what I find as well. Like when clients, want me to assess their cortisol levels, I say, well, we can do a snapshot, just like a once-off blood test, but it's not going to give us a good insight into how much cortisol is being produced throughout the day. Whereas I definitely recommend, definitely the Dutch test. But in terms of like a symptom picture, like if we had to look at a patient that has low levels of cortisol, how might that present in a patient?
Usually it comes, the patient tells me that they feel puffy. So they have a lot of, like water in their system. They are exhausted all the time. They also have trouble sleeping, so winding down at night. They are the most common symptoms that I seem to see in terms of cortisol issues. The dysregulation of being energized and not.
Yeah, I've definitely found those that are low in cortisol tend to like crave a lot of, sugar. They crave a lot of sugar. They crave, a lot of salt. And when they wake up in the morning, they're also, craving stimulants. The three S's I call salt, sugar, and stimulants.
Well, yeah, like obviously they're feeling tired. So where do you first go? You go to a coffee, right? Or, you might go to an energy drink because you're not feeling energized. And then the thing is, when you haven't had a restful sleep and you've got a deregulated cortisol pattern, your hunger hormone deregulates as well. So then that's why you crave all these sugary things or the easier foods. And then you end up putting on weight maybe because you're not moving. And it's just this like very painful cycle that people go through.
Let's say, for example, I want you to share what you've seen with some of the Dutch test results in the past. Maybe talk through what that test actually tells us about the human body.
Okay, so the way I describe the Dutch test, so it's dried urine testing for comprehensive hormones. That's its name. It's the gold standard test for hormone testing. And that's because we get a cycle throughout the day. Like I said, men can use this test as well, and they can use it at any point of the month. And the reason why I say this is because it's a little bit different for women. So cycling women, so women who are still getting their period, we usually test this on a certain day. And we usually test in the mid-luteal phase of their cycle, so around day 20. And we adjust that day if we need to. But essentially, it's a test of your sex hormones and their metabolites, your cortisol and your melatonin, and we have a little bit of the methylation cycle, just a tiny bit in there as well. So we're seeing the bigger picture of what's happening happening in your body for, whatever reason you've decided to use the test for.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that makes the Dutch test so useful as a practitioner is because it's taking into account a lot of different hormones and pathways at once. Instead of us just ordering 6, 7, 8 different tests at once, it's all done under the one sort of umbrella. And I think the melatonin assessment, that result that it gives as well, is also really interesting. Because
yeah, I find it interesting too.
Yeah, have you seen patients that are very low with the melatonin production?
I haven't actually, not usually. That doesn't usually come across. A lot of my patients that use the Dutch test suffer from PCOS, something I mentioned earlier in the podcast. They're still cycling, but they are struggling with testosterone and estrogen metabolism. Not so much the melatonin, but it is still interesting to see because people don't think that they can get that tested.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the PCOS side of things, how it's quite common nowadays, right? For women to experience that.
Yeah. And there isn't a set in stone reason why someone has developed that. So now they're saying that you can develop it post pill. So if you jumped on the pill for a number of years, that could happen. You could have developed it through your eating habits. It could be genetic. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why you might have it. And again, this test is great because we're looking at so many different areas of the reproductive system. So whatever the reason is, we can have a look and see, you're not metabolizing estrogen properly. It's going down this pathway instead of that pathway. Let's look at your testosterone, your DHT, DHEAs, and then we can put some nutritional protocols in place.
Yeah, I'd love to learn about some of the, Tanya, I'd love to learn about your focus when it comes to nutrition, specifically for PCOS. Are there key dietary principles or approaches to managing PCOS?
Yeah. So with the test as well, this is such a great test. We can get a little bit of an insight into your phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification pathways. So your liver is extremely important for metabolizing everything in the body, including your hormones. Once that hormone is used, is it exiting properly? So I always like to focus on the liver. And I find that helps. So in terms of, your magnesium, your zinc, your B vitamins, is phase 1 working? Is that working properly? Okay, cool. Then is it phase 2? Is phase 2 a little bit sluggish and then it's not picking up the metabolites in order to bring it to your GIT or your kidneys to excrete? But in terms of what I see a lot in clinic is insulin resistance. So a lot of the girls, unfortunately, are struggling with that. And we've got a number of different nutritional, some supplements that we give to them, but also the way they eat and the pattern of eating really helps as well.
Well, let's sort of look at that insulin resistance picture and sort of look at the way in which you'd sort of address that or tackle an insulin resistance case.
Yeah. Okay. So first and foremost, I look at their diet. I have them go through in very specific terms, so how much food they eat and the times that they eat it. And then I adjust their macronutrients. I speak to them about, and I find this really important, that there are going to be different times of the day in which you're most hungry. So I work with the client in that sense as well. So the client might be like, when I wake up in the morning, I'm not really hungry, but between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., I'm starving. Okay, cool. Let's work with that. So we can have something little in the morning and then we can increase your calories between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And then we also incorporate things like resistance training. We do lots of magnesium, zinc, your B vitamins. I always work on their methylation cycle and their liver phase 1 and 2 detoxification pathways. So that might sound a little bit complicated, but it's not. A lot of these pathways and a lot of these systems kind of overlap with one another. So we kill a few birds with one stone.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when it comes to things like optimizing for fertility or improving reproductive capacity, that's Like when people look at what's your approach to doing that, it's like actually just getting the body very healthy, like get the body
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's like
Your foundations. There's always foundations that you need to stick by, I believe. So liver health is foundational for me. And your methylation cycle is also another thing where I'm like, if you get those two things right, you're going to see a lot more
yeah, this is
results.
something, and I was mentioning this this morning on a group coaching call, the importance of liver health. Like to you and I, we both understand how crucial it is for general overall metabolism and things like that. But talk to my audience and explain like why is liver health so crucial to focus on nowadays?
Oh, okay. I love this conversation. Okay. We live, whether people want to accept it or not, in a really man made world. Okay. So, where we buy our food, where our food is farmed, the air that we breathe, the technology that we use, what we surround ourselves with, your body will absorb everything that you smell, like pop on your skin, eat or drink, and it needs to leave. It needs to find a way to get out of the body. And your liver is the powerhouse for that. So if that is nice and strong, you're going to have those detoxification pathways work really well. And then, those, let's say they're chemicals or toxins, are going to exit the body
Mm.
faster.
And that's actually really crucial because if people have a buildup of these toxins and chemicals in the body, that can lead to symptoms like, headaches or low energy or, burnout symptoms. So sort of talk upon like what symptoms people might experience if they have like a sluggish liver.
You might have an issue with cholesterol, I've noticed. You may have an issue with blood sugar regulation. You may have an issue with using the bathroom. Skin, you might have poor skin, whether that's dryness, whether that's acne. Um, Brain fog is huge as well. So, the important thing with the liver that maybe people aren't familiar with is when things get broken down, they first gets broken down in the phase one. So your molecules are getting broken down, but actually these molecules, if they're not picked up at the right time by phase two, they're reactive. They're actually quite toxic. So you need to make sure that these two things are working in synchronicity. But it's systemic. I would say that if your liver is not doing well, it's systemic. So if you've got a little bit of a weakness in different parts of your body, you're going to feel more inflamed.
Yeah, yeah, great points there. I think I'll share a sort of anecdote with my older brother. Anytime he has like really high fatty foods, like unhealthy fatty foods. I mean, not the healthy fatty foods, but like going out on the weekend. He'll find what will happen is his skin would flare up, and I truly do believe that the presence of these like pimples or acne is a result of the liver being burdened and not having an ability to detoxify the vegetable oils, like the like canola oil, soybean oil, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And you know what? Health is complicated. It really is. And I know that we have such an access to information, like even this podcast now. And I don't know if I'm sounding a little bit too general, but health is so complicated and it's individualistic. And, your brother might get issues with his skin, but someone else might get issues with like migraines, for example, but it still might be coming from the same point. The liver might be the reason for people to develop different
Yeah,
symptoms.
yeah. I think a number of people nowadays when they are troubled with a symptom, they just want to figure out what is the root cause, like why has that symptom emerged, and so like that wearing the doctor's hat to a degree is actually quite fun for some people. Like, they get carried away with it and it's Dr. Google mode. But yeah.
Dr. Google gives me anxiety. Even sometimes when I look at it, I'm
And
like,
also the
wow.
information that they feed on Google, like that information is oftentimes like biased as well. Like the results are just terrible sometimes.
Yeah. And this is let's go back to the whole foundations of health, looking after these systems, these big, big systems that help you, you know, stay alive and alert and, be full of energy every day. if you look after them, things are going to be easier for you, and you're not going to get these like outbursts because you've eaten some like fatty food for the night. Your body's just able to remove whatever the issue is very quickly.
What role do you feel like stress has on maybe like emotional eating or things like that? Like, how do you go about factoring that into treating a patient?
Yeah, stress is difficult because obviously it's subjective, right? So someone's stress is your neighbor's, easy day out. Um, Sleep hygiene, I feel, would be like the number one thing I'd really encourage, making sure that you're getting a good night's sleep. Um, I want to say meditation and breath work, but I find that like even for myself, I'm, a go, 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 go. And when someone would be like, oh, maybe you should meditate for 15 minutes, I would think, oh my gosh, my head is so full. Like I can't shut this down for 15 minutes. That's not going to happen. It's going to take me 45 to even try and calm down. So, of course, I believe in breath work and meditation and things like that. But first step for someone I would say that is on the go, go, go would be sleep hygiene.
And it's funny because if we correct the sleep, oftentimes a lot of other symptoms will just resolve, like, for example, the overeating, that side of things. So have you sort of ever looked into different nutritional interventions for supporting sleep? Like, let's say, have you looked at nutritional medicine from that point of view?
Yes, I have. So magnesium threonate I found works really well. It is the only form of magnesium that can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. So that's always a good thing. Magnesium as a whole is very important for a range of different systems, but focusing on sleep, I would say magnesium threonate. I'd even say chamomile. So whether that's a chamomile tea, they work really well. And also things like, this isn't a nutritional protocol, but something that people need to be aware of, blue light. It's everywhere. You relax when you watch TV, you relax when you're on your phone. Find something that you can block that light out at least 3 hours before bedtime. It is so important and you will feel the difference.
Yeah, I've been now wearing blue blockers for probably like blue light blocking glasses for probably like 7 years. And I think
Same.
Yeah,
I have mine too.
I would say maybe we were one of the first to wear those, blue light blocking glasses. And back in the day, I used to wear the ones that were really ugly, like the really bulky.
The red one? Yeah. I remember when those came out, I was like, oh, wow, okay, we're doing red now. But they work, but these things work. And sleep is so important. Like, if you're not sleeping properly, that is going to impact not only the energy for the day, but if you have an issue with the consumption of food, that's going to raise your hunger hormone quite significantly. And that's going to make it harder for you. And you're going to be stressed because you're always eating and eating and eating, and you don't know why. It's because your body hasn't relaxed.
What sort of advice would you give to like the younger generation, maybe like late teens or early 20s when it comes to nutrition? What sort of advice would you like to give to them?
Oh, I would love to talk to them about the methylation cycle. I talk about this cycle constantly, and I want the word to get out there. I'm so glad actually that Joe Rogan and who is he, Gary Brecker, like have ignited this speech, because I have been talking about this for years. Like I had a look at my genetics about, how old am I? About 8 years ago. And that is something that I think the younger gen should get around. Definitely.
Let's definitely expand upon that. I mean, the methylation cycle is crucial for so many parts of health. And, there is a test that is out there now, which is quite well known, which is the MTHFR genetic polymorphism test. Do you want to sort of expand upon that one there, Tanya?
Yeah. So we've got 2 tests for the methylation cycle at Optimum Testing. We've got the genetic test, which does your entire genome, so your individual genome, and we have a chapter on the methylation cycle in that test. So that's really important, and I always think that that's a great step 1. We also have another test. it's the methylation cycle in real time. So despite your genetic differences, it's showing us how your methylation is coping right now, and that's a different test. But essentially, the methylation cycle, there is a lot of media on this at the moment because they're saying that 44% of the population struggle to convert folate to active folate. And this conversion is going to stunt the cycle. And it happens quite earlier on in the cycle as well. So it's really important to be looked at. So if you have this genetic polymorphism, the MTHFR polymorphism, you essentially can't convert folate to 5-methylene tetrahydrofolate. And then from there, you can't break down a protein called homocysteine. So if you can't break this protein down, it's going to rise. Homocysteine is indicative of cardiovascular disease, so stroke, heart attack. It's also highly inflammatory. So again, if you've got weaknesses in the body, like we were saying before, it could attack things like that. And then if you're not breaking down homocysteine, you're not creating methionine. So methionine is anti-inflammatory. And the role of methionine is essentially, methionine is like an epigenetic factor. So it switches the cell on and off, or off, I should say, on or off, to ensure that the cell is doing what it's supposed to do.
And this homocysteine, what might happen with like a regular doctor is like only sometimes will doctors order the test. So then for patients, how are they ever going to know whether or not their homocysteine levels are high? And if their levels are high, then it's absolutely paramount that they do an MTHFR test. And so do you want to sort of expand upon like what do you personally consider as high for homocysteine?
I don't know actually, Lucas. I have to double check.
Usually what I say with the homocysteine side of things is anything above 8 is starting to become high, but it should be in the reference range when you get a blood test result back. They put it between 5 and 15, which is a pretty big like reference range. But in terms of like what's optimal, I think anything less than 8 is ideal, personally.
Well, yeah, the reference ranges that you get at a GP are different from the optimal reference ranges that I'm sure you use as well. So I'm never looking at you being at an average range. I'm always going to make sure that you're going to be at the optimum range, the optimal range of whatever the situation is. But what optimum testing do quite well is we very much promote the genetic test as always your step one. And like I say to my clients, this test is done, once in your life. It's the human genome as we know it right now. When biotechnology expands, we'll obviously, put that forward. But this should always be your step one because this is how your body is working. So if I can see these deficiencies in folate or vitamin D or magnesium, whatever that is, we're going to fill in those gaps as quickly as we can, so you're not getting homocysteine at all. A high homocysteine, at all.
And in terms of what percentage of a huge percentage of the population has issues with that ability to convert folic acid into 5-methylfolate, right?
Yeah, they're saying about 44% of the population have that issue. Yeah. And this is important as well because if you're looking to fall pregnant, you really need folate as part of the developing fetus. So if you can't break that down, that's going to possibly cause issues moving forward.
Yeah, we know that like insufficient amounts of folic acid can lead to like birth defects and even affect the intelligence, the IQ, and even with iodine, the IQ of the baby as well.
Yeah. And even vitamin D, actually. Lack of vitamin D in the mother will then present as lack of vitamin D in the fetus, and that can cause, they're saying that it can cause things like ADHD or autistic-like traits in the child. So again, this is why it's so important. Find out where your weaknesses are, top them up, and then, other biochemical processes are going to work as they should.
Yeah. And I think it's also important because these tests that we're talking about now, these are like objective, it's objective data. So it's like you can keep that as a record and you can track it over time. Like what gets measured gets managed, as they say. Like, so you can start to form an understanding of like where you're at with certain biomarkers. And, you know, let's say somebody is low in vitamin D and they start to supplement vitamin D. Well, maybe 1,000 IU is not enough. And so they need to go up to like, 3 to 5,000 IU per day.
Yep. I personally take 5,000 international units per day. And also, it's not just about vitamin D. Yeah, vitamin D is important. It's like used in over 1,000 biochemical pathways in the body. But we need to support that with K2. We need to support that with magnesium. And this is information that you're not really going to get exposed to unless you have a healthcare practitioner that understands the synergy of vitamins and nutrients. So I never encourage anyone to just take a vitamin D on its own. You need that K2 to prevent the calcification of the arteries, and you want to, pop that back in the bones where it should be. And then you also want vitamin D to become bioavailable, which is another thing that we look at in the genetic test. So if you have an issue with that, magnesium is extremely important to make that active.
And also time of day, when to supplement vitamin D.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Early in the morning.
Yeah. I still get clients coming to me saying they take vitamin D before bed. And I'm like, no. Like it has to be in the morning.
I know. And there are always, I wish people would stop looking for shortcuts as well. I've got clients that are like, cool, so can I take all these vitamins like before I go to bed? And I'm like, well, no, that's not going to be beneficial for you. Look at the human body. It is so strong and it does so many things, but like, I'm just I don't want to promote all these shortcuts all the time. You need to look after yourself properly. And there are tools to help you with that, but you also need to put them into place.
What about in terms of, I'd imagine, Tanya, you've seen like a number of clients with low iron. Do you want to sort of talk about that, what you do in that situation?
Yeah, iron's a big one. So iron needs to get tested before any supplementation is put forward. So regardless if you have low iron or high iron, you're still going to get those general symptoms of weakness and fatigue. So step 1, always get tested first. And step 2, we're always looking at your saturation and your ferritin, so your iron storage as well. Very, very important. So with iron, is it getting absorbed? So I might have women that are like, I'm taking a iron supplement. Then I'm like, okay, you're taking all this iron. First of all, is it attached to the right protein? So iron should be attached to a glycinate, and then you need the appropriate microbiome for that to be absorbed. You also need B12, vitamin C. That also helps with the absorption of iron. Iron's a tricky one, but it's easily resolved.
And in terms of like the demographic, is there a certain demographic you see that have low iron typically, or is it just, it can be across the board?
It's across the board. Yeah.
I think it's estimated that over a billion people worldwide are low in iron, which is just crazy.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, those that are actually like athletes or doing a lot of intense exercise, I don't think they realize this, but there's something called foot strike anemia, which is because they're running on hard surfaces. It actually creates, it can damage the red blood cells and lead to low levels of iron as well.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, get tested, get the data. This is why data is so important. Keep it for yourself, look back over the years and see how you're tracking. Have some responsibility for your health.
Yep, that's a really important message. And I think a number of people that are listening to this podcast, Tanya, would have that same approach with their health. That's why they watch my content and they love learning about how they can pretty much take their health into their own hands, because a lot of the time doctors will just quickly rush through their blood test results and not really even care.
Well, it's funny because I had a client recently, and I always say if they've got recent bloods, bring them forward. It's always good to have more data than less. Um, and I was looking through them, and I could see signs of toxicity like within these results. And he like didn't mention anything to me. He said, "Oh, my GP, said that I only really had an issue with my cholesterol." And I said to him, "Do you happen to work with like toxic chemicals during the day?" And he goes, "Yeah, I use Roundup. I spray Roundup, in my fields and things like that." And I'm like, "I can see it in your blood test." And he was like, "Well, the doctor didn't pick up on that. How can?" And I told him about the different reference ranges that we use compared to the GPs and how we can pick up on those small little traits. I'm always looking for clues, always.
Yeah, I think it's an important lesson for people to understand is like, yeah, it's important to do blood testing and these functional tests like you offer at optimumtesting.com.au. It's great to see people like yourself like popping up and talking about the importance of these things, because like you've probably seen it with some of your own clients, just how dramatic of an impact it can have when you prescribe or recommend things based upon objective blood test results. Like it's no longer taking like the shotgun approach. It's like taking a sniper rifle approach and addressing the root cause.
Yeah, and I think it's putting more trust in our industry because we've been through it. And going, well, your data says this, and now we're retesting and it says that. And they're like, wow, I can actually feel that as well. And it's like, see, it is working. We are here to help you become more resilient, because that is the main goal. You don't know where life's going to take you and the stresses that are going to come forward, but you need to make sure that the human body is resilient.
Yeah, phenomenal. Well, Tanya, if my audience wants to learn more about your services, or if they want to connect with you as a practitioner, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can head to our website, so optimumtesting.com.au, and click book a consultation. So fill out that screening form, and then I'll get back to you and we can discuss whether you'd like to have just a consultation or a functional test. We can have a conversation about your goals. So yeah, pretty easy.
Yeah, no, well, keep doing what you're doing, Tanya. It's awesome to see other practitioners who prioritize blood testing and objective data, because unfortunately, like nutritionists or like naturopaths get a bit of a bad rap, like that we're not really evidence based. But I think what you're doing is a great thing, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.